The call from darkness to the gathering light. We are moving from darkness to the gathering light, and guess who the gathering light is? We are the gathering light. Every single one of us who steps forward and says, I will live my higher purpose on behalf of the great change on this planet is part of that gathering light. And we know it, we sense it, we feel it. I want to read you this little poem that I wrote recently as a theme for today. It's called Celebrating the Dawn. In the dark night when I fear for the world, I think of you, the friends and family of the earth, of your love and your caring for the beauty of it all. I hear the songbirds at first light calling us to awaken to the coming dawn, for the children, for hope, and for the earth. And I rejoice in the love of friendship spreading across our world, you and I and all our loved ones weaving together a beloved community. With you, I celebrate the gathering light of love. Let us sing the song of our soul. Let us dance the hope of the dawn. Let us live the great awakening. In every wisdom tradition in the world that I'm familiar with, the awareness of death is used as a way to awaken us to the preciousness of this moment now, to the gift of being alive in these bodies now, and to open our hearts to love for everything, for life, for this moment, for our consciousness. And now I would suggest to you that in addition to individual death meditation, we have now created in our time a global death meditation in which we see the potential for our planet being turned into a very different planet than the one it is now, more desolate, more barren, more desperate, in which we see the human-caused threats, and we're aware of the potential for the death of many species, and in fact, the threat to human civilization itself. May this meditation on death cause us to awaken and change course. May this meditation on global death cause us to recognize that we are interdependent with all life and cause us to embrace the ethic of living with respect for self, others, earth. I loved tucking my children in at night when they were little. And I remember one night tucking Zay in when he was 4, and this was his prayer. Dear God, thank you for letting me be such a lucky boy. Thank you for all the people I love. Please help the people without houses to have homes, and the people who don't have anything to eat to have food. And please bring Albert Einstein back to life. For most of my adult life, I have wrestled with this question and have devoted as much of my energy as I could to this question, to this dilemma, which is the dilemma that Albert Einstein posed when he said, the problems that we have created cannot be solved at the level that we created them. We need a new mode of thinking. That recognition coming out of the nuclear age, coming out of the age of weapons of mass destruction, coming out of the age of global warming, coming out of the age of what we're doing to our environment, has haunted me and inspired me and propelled me for all of the last 25 years. How do we create that shift of consciousness in ourselves so that we really are living as a light? A shift of consciousness in our being so that we are a beacon, so that when Dr. King says the darkest hour of the night is the hour before the dawn, we know that in our own lives because we are feeling that sense of being a light. How do we do that? That's the dilemma. That's the challenge. That's the question. I'm going to be speaking about 7 themes. The first theme is facing the human-caused threats to life. The second theme is choosing hope because hope is always a choice and choosing a vision for the Great Awakening. The third theme is awakening from the trance of small self, from who we think we are as an object, and from that void inside us that is always craving and wanting more and feeling not enough, awakening from the small self. The fourth theme is realizing who we are. Who are we behind the masks, behind the thoughts, behind the patterns, behind the roles? Who are you, really? Because who you are really matters immensely to the planet and matters immensely to the future that we're choosing. The fifth theme, based on Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., is living with what they called satyagraha, which means, translated from the Sanskrit, soul force, the power of the soul of who you are. The sixth theme is building now, in the next 10 pivotal years in human history, a unifying, multi-faith, environmental movement that is committed to living with respect for self, respect for others across race, creed, gender, sexual orientation, and respect for all life and the living earth. Building a unifying movement needed critically at this time. And the last theme is you and I being a light for the coming dawn, for the gathering of all the folks who care about this planet in that unifying movement. You know, we've always had threats to human life and to life itself. There have always been catastrophic occurrences. There have been volcanoes. There have been earthquakes. But we live at a very unique and pivotal time. We live at a time where the primary threats to human survival, or at least to human civilization and to the diversity of species on the planet, are human-caused and human-created. And we know that. And so we're going along in our busy lives, right? Trying very hard to make our lives work. And there's this undercurrent in the newspapers and on the internet that is continually sending this message to us that this is a very pivotal period in human history. And you sit there and you try to get through the denial that we all have to understand what's happening. That the ice sheets really are melting, that global warming is accelerating faster than almost all scientists predicted, that we're really facing a major upheaval in climactic conditions which will depend largely upon the next 10 to 20 years in terms of what we do. That this is a very pivotal period in human history. And denial is that space where we just don't seem to have the capacity to let it in. But the problem is, if we don't let it in, we don't change. We don't wake up. We don't make that next step into consciousness to, as Gandhi said, be the change that's needed. We have to start with our spiritual journey with what is, with what's real. And what's real is that we are facing these human-caused threats to life. Now, here's the good news. Global warming, the threat to the oceans, the threat of the use, God forbid, of weapons of mass destruction, they all have the capacity to do something that has never been done in human history before, which is to bring everybody together. To bring us together in response to a common danger that we have created, to recognize that we are all interdependent. Or as Dr. Martin Luther King loved to say, that we are part of one web of mutual destiny woven together. So these very threats that we have trouble facing are the imperative for us to awaken to another level of consciousness. I believe that this great awakening is already well underway, that there are millions of us who have committed ourselves in terms of each other in the earth. Only we don't yet quite feel it or see it. We don't understand it as one larger movement because we see the environmental, human rights, civil rights, human rights, women's rights, gender rights, faith communities that are committed to love and compassion, spiritual entrepreneurs who are trying to do goodwill in the world, musicians that have a message about hope and peace and dignity, artists. We see it all around us. It's the antidote to the newspapers. It's the antidote to all that bad news. It's the antidote to the human-caused threats to life. And it's rising. Yes. It's got to rise. It's rising with your generation. I'm going to draw from some great teachers here because we stand in a lineage of great teachers. There are many, many folks who've been to the mountaintop and looked over and saw the other side over the centuries and over the millennia. And most recently, of course, Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King have told us that we can live a different way, that we don't have to create a world of pain, destruction, and barren, desolate landscape, that we can create a world that is a world of love and dignity and decency, a world that is sustainable. But we got to choose it, each one of us, because we matter that much. Or as the Dalai Lama puts it, he says, you know, the world is really a spiritual democracy. And what he means by that is that the world is the collective result of all of our thoughts and actions. That the planet we have right now is the collective result of all of our thoughts and actions. Therefore, the good news is, if we change our thoughts and actions, we can change the outcome. And as we raise our frequency, our altitude, if you will, as we go into big self, our thoughts and actions matter more because our ripple effect is greater. At the beginning of the documentary on Mother Teresa, Richard Attenborough, the great filmmaker, shows all of these images of racial injustice, of pain and suffering, of war, of victims, of violence. And then here's what he says as a quote. There is a light in this world, a healing spirit more powerful than any darkness we may encounter. We sometimes lose sight of this force when there is suffering and so much pain. Then suddenly, the spiritual emerges through the lives of ordinary people, us, who hear the call and answer in extraordinary ways.
Doom 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 doo doo doom 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 doo doo doom.
So as we go on this journey of awakening together, I'd like you to think about and feel, who do you love? Who do you hold in a sacred way in your life? Your family, your friends, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your children, your community. Who is it that you're willing to stand by, that you're committed to with all of your heart and mind and spirit, that you would live and die for? Who do you love so deeply that love is the fiber of your being when you think about that person, when you think about that community, when you think about that mountain or that beautiful river? And I'd like to invite you, as Charmaine sings this beautiful song, Stand By Me, to extend that sense of your love to the whole planet, to the earth, glowing in deep space with such radiant light. Our home, planet Earth, stand by me.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. Second verse. If the sky we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, my darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Just stand now. Please stand by me. One more time. So darling, real loud. Stand by me. Yeah. Stand. Please stand. Stand by me.
When my son Zaya was a little baby, I held him in my hands shortly after he was born on Hiroshima Day, August 6th. And it was a very pivotal moment in my life because I was holding this beautiful child, magnificent, each one of us, aren't we? And so I'm holding my son right there in my hands, and I'm juxtaposing the experience of this one magnificent life with our weapons of mass destruction and the threat to the future of life. And it doesn't fit for me, the juxtaposition of my commitment to my baby son. And it was in that moment that I made a commitment, I renewed a commitment that I would devote my energies and my life to standing by the earth that we live on behalf of the children, on behalf of the next generation. Now, since then, I left my job at the university. I left the mothership. I went out, founded Project Victory with some dear friends. We've trained tens of thousands of people in conflict resolution and peacemaking. We've done national dialogues on reducing the risk of nuclear war, dismantling chemical weapons, reducing toxic waste. We did the largest national dialogue on race relations ever conducted in American history. 165 cities, 10,000 people of different races. Several days. Beautiful, beautiful event. People reaching out to each other. And we did the first national interfaith dialogue in Washington, D.C. So when I say to you that I'm speaking that there is a great awakening underway, I'm speaking out of an experience of contact with all of these people. The next 10 to 20 years are truly pivotal. That we have to build a unifying, multi-faith environmental movement that is committed to the radical notion of actually implementing the golden rule, you know? The radical notion of actually making our organizations and our corporations and our communities, having them abide by the same ethic that we abide by, which is respect and reciprocity. That is a spiritual revolution that changes everything. If you ask me to define the great change, the great turning, the great awakening, the great transformation, I would say the great change has been articulated down through the centuries, down through the millennia, as the mountaintop vision. And if you'll allow me to distinguish for a moment between that part of religion that is based at times in fear and divisive theology and creates holy war and pain, and that part of religion which is the human spirit aspiring to know the infinite and is congruent with science. If you allow me to point to all of these different wisdom traditions across the ages, great souls who've been to the mountaintop, and they've said, there will come a time when we create peace on this planet. And there is a way to create peace in your life. Now imagine if we were actually applying the wisdom of our humanity, which teaches one basic principle. a principle of love and compassion and says, as the Dalai Lama says over and over again, you want to be happy in this life? Go for enlightened self-interest that loves and empowers everyone around you, that works for a world that works for everyone. That's how you get to happiness. That's how you get to joy. Reach out to people who are suffering. In compassion, you'll feel better. The small self suddenly expands. Einstein said, we cannot solve the problems that we've created at the level we created them at. It's like we're in a box canyon and we know it. As humanity, we're in this box canyon. If we keep doing what we're doing, we're in this box canyon and there's no way out. We're on a collision course with our own actions. So we need a transformation, an evolutionary transformation of human consciousness that is about you. Because the collective cannot transform except through the transformation of individuals, each one of us. It's about each one of us choosing that transformation. And I would give you just 4 quick insights as to what that transformation is. First piece of the transformation is the Dalai Lama's rather profound insight that our world is a spiritual democracy. Now, what does he mean when he says our world is a spiritual democracy? What he means is that what we're seeing on our planet is the sum total of our collective thoughts and actions. We are living in a collective reflection of our own thoughts and actions as humanity. So therefore, you want to change the collective expression. We have to change our own thoughts and actions to a higher frequency, a higher level based in compassion and understanding our interdependence. That's the first insight. Second insight is from Jane Goodall, who, as you know, spent much of her life studying chimpanzees and who talks about our kinship with all life. For so long, we humans have had this superior notion that we are somehow divinely justified in exploiting nature and exploiting other beings as though they are inferior to ourselves. That must end. It is ending. We're learning more and more and more about the intelligence of other creatures. We understand now that elephants grieve for their dead, that sometimes they pick up the bones of their dead and they carry them for miles, hundreds of miles, grieving. We understand that there's consciousness in all forms and that we share that consciousness. We have kinship with all life. The third insight in this transformation is from dear Mahatma Gandhi, one of the truly great figures in human history, who said, look, the means are the ends in the making. You can't get to a sustainable, just, peaceful world through violent means. You can't get to a peaceful, happy, joyous life through aggressive, violent means. We have to live where it is that we want to be. We have to live our goal. We have to live the future now. You leave here today and you say, I am living in the sense of a new way of thinking, a new way of being. And Gandhi's phrase was, as you've heard many, many times, but it's quite profound to implement it, to be the conscious change that is needed to save and restore our planet. And then the last insight is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He talked about this image of the beloved community. And he said that the beloved community is that place that we're going to create on this planet when this planet understands that we are one humanity, one family, that we have essentially one shared vision across all of our races and religions, which is the vision of creating peace on earth, and that we actually have one shared ethic in all the wisdom traditions of the world, which is the ethic of respect and reciprocity, known in the West as the Golden Rule, but articulated in every wisdom and religious tradition in the world, that you want to treat the other the way you want to be treated, everywhere, at all times, and that expands and extends to all life as well. We need to extend the ethic of the golden rule to each other, to ourselves, and to all life. That is a transformation of the human spirit. So my mother always used to tell me when I was a little boy, son, don't rock in your chair. And I would sit there in the dining room chairs and I would rock on them and I would rock on them until often they broke. So, fast forward from my boyhood, we've been doing dialogue work and conflict resolution work all around the United States and to some extent around the world, and we've been bringing people of different points of view together to exercise a kind of soulful leadership to try to figure our way out of the issues that really threaten life on Earth. And so that took me to a national dialogue event that we created on reducing the risk of nuclear war. And if you can picture this scene, there were many people there. There were several hundred people there, just like here. And we were committed to 4 days of dialogue, except that in this room there were weapons designers from the Los Alamos labs, there were leading peace activists, there were actually representatives of the military, there were representatives of the State Department, there were citizen diplomacy teams that had come in from around the country, and we were talking about what can we do together as conservatives and liberals, hawks and doves, to reduce the risk of nuclear war. Well, 3 days into it, of this intense dialogue, I looked out at the crowd and I thought to myself, I need somebody very funny because this crowd has been seriously working on serious things, but they're starting to go into mutiny. We need to do something really funny. And as I'm thinking this thought, and I'm at this huge castle in northern New Mexico where we have this thing, and there's a big, huge fireplace back here, I'm rocking on my chair, as my mother told me not to do. And I'm rocking on my chair, and I'm thinking, I really need something funny to happen. I really do. And suddenly, and this is with public television filming this event, I rock over and I disappear off the stage down into the fireplace. And I roll just right, so I'm really not hurt, but I'm now crouched down in the fireplace off the stage, feeling a little bit like a fool, yes? So then I think to myself very quickly, you know how the mind goes very quick and you sort of get a series of alternatives? What can I do? I'm down here. What can I do to save face? Well, I could come back out and I could do denial. Everything's cool, right? Let's go on with the dialogue, right? That won't work. I could do victim blame. It was the chair. This chair is defective. I mean, it shouldn't rock back like that. So I decided I would do what I call the circus bow. I got up, I put my hands in the air, and I just did a bow. So I want to invite all of you now to stand up for a moment. I want you to take a bow for every time in your life you've messed up, done something foolish, done something stupid. Every time, take a big bow and just shake it off. There we go. Just shake it off. Shake it off. That's it. That's it. Embrace the fool. There we go. All right. All right. Very good. If you don't learn anything else from this journey today, it's a great, great thing in life to be able to embrace your own fool, to be able to take a circus bow when you mess up, to be able to say, I'm sorry, and to be able to laugh and go on, right? Dr. King said this, our goal is to create the beloved community. And this will require implementing not new teachings, or changing your particular religion or ethnic group or anything that you are, but actually going to the depths of who you are and living it. Then you look to the great wisdom traditions of the world and affirm humanity's collective wisdom and our emerging neuroscience, which is supporting the insight that everything we think and do feeds back and creates new pathways in the brain. New York cab drivers, London cab drivers have huge spatial memories. You go out and learn a new language, they can show you on a CT scan. They hook up the great meditators from
the Tibetan tradition or from the Franciscan nun tradition. And guess what? When they ask them to pull the cord while they're taking pictures of their brains when they're in deep meditation, the same area of their brain lights up no matter what tradition they're from. And they all say they are experiencing oneness with the whole, oneness with God, oneness with existence. It's just words, folks. There's no reason to go to holy war over our words and our metaphors. The key is to get to your own peace. You know, get to your own peak experience, your own experience of oneness as a meditative practice, so that you're living in that space much of the time. And then out of that arises compassion. And if, in fact, it is the most pivotal time in history now, after 2,500 years of all of those teachings, if now we are really up against it in terms of climate change, weapons of mass destruction, poverty, hunger, racism, and particularly the absolutist, fundamentalist, extremist mind that knows that it has the only truth, that knows that its way is the only way, that knows that it can hate on behalf of its commitment to whatever it's calling the absolute. I'm just telling you, everybody else who is a decent human being, a person of goodwill, who honors people across races and creeds, needs to stand up in your life. We are needed to counteract the effects of extremism. We are needed to counteract the effects of global warming. We are needed to counteract the effects of hatred. We are needed. In 1965, they did a poll in the United States about who was the most hated person. The most hated person by the largest number of people in the United States in 1965 was Dr. Martin Luther King. If you don't think transformation is possible, look around. Go visit the monument on the Washington Mall right next to Lincoln, Dr. Martin Luther King. And look what Dr. King did in his life to go from the most hated, most feared to being now affirmed as the greatest prophet of the 20th century and one of the most beloved figures in our culture across all races, ethnicities. Dr. King said this: our goal, the goal of people on the planet, is to create the beloved community. And this will require, now listen carefully, because this is the revolution of the Spirit. This is what he's talking about. And this will require an inner change in the quality of our soul and an outer change in the quantity of our compassionate action.
We are the gathering light. Every one of us who steps forward and says, yes, I choose to be a light for the coming dawn, joins the great caravan of souls that have stood up to oppose oppression, that have stood up for rights and dignity, that have stood up for love and compassion. And I'd like you to picture in your mind's eye a dark valley of human history with mountains in the background. And I'd like you to picture these streams of light coming down that valley towards us. Many streams of light coming into this moment. One stream of light is the stream of all those folks who have fought for human rights and human dignity. Another stream of light is all the women who stood up, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Sojourner Truth and Susan B. Anthony, who stood up for women's rights and for women's dignity. Another stream of light is John Muir, all the way down to the environmentalists of our time who have taught us over and over again that our planet is a living organism and that we must treat it with love and respect. Another stream of light is every wisdom tradition inside every religion that is really committed to love and compassion, to feeding the hungry, to clothing the naked, to caring for people who are suffering, to reducing suffering. All of those streams of light coming down into our time. And we're here now, and it's a pivotal time in human history to be alive and to be committed to creating the conditions for a just and sustainable peace in your life and on earth in this century now. So what's in the way of living that vision? What's in the way in each of our lives of getting up tomorrow morning and going, all right, I'm down. I'm part of the Great Awakening. It's happening for me. I'm going to live my highest calling. I'm going for it. Well, what's in the way is what I call the trance of the small self, the trance of ego. At the level of the mind, we're fragmented. So one of the major themes I would suggest to you that's below the surface in the egoic mind is the theme that we're not enough, that there's a void inside, an emptiness inside, a gnawing inside. If you look at addiction theory and what addiction is about, or the 12-step group process, the reason that they point to a spiritual solution is because they're trying to address that gnawing, that ever-gnawing restlessness that doesn't give us any peace. Now think about what small self is. Small self is where we think we're an object, and where we think we're not enough, and where we're caught in our patterns and our thought processes. That's the small self. And so as you awaken from the trance of small self, from the fear of not being enough, we get to the next theme, which is, who are you? Who are you really? The shift of consciousness is to move from identifying with small self. Take a breath, everybody. Create a gap. Shift into the experience of your body, into being consciously present in this moment. If a majority of the human species was consciously present in this moment, do you think we would be devouring our planet? Do you think we would be caught up in a mass trance of materialism where the shopping mall is our temple? And we're devouring the very ecology that sustains us? If we were awake, would we be doing that? So one of the very first and deepest things we can do is to be awake. We need to raise the consciousness on our planet. We need millions of people who are really living at peace. Millions of people who are happy in their lives. Millions of people who look around and say, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful for my life. Rather than focusing on what isn't happening in your life, try focusing on all the things that are happening in your life. And see if it doesn't take you out of the trance of small self into this much bigger experience. When we see that we're interconnected, okay? Our humanity's great wisdom traditions teach that we are interconnected. There's a oneness to all life, an ecological oneness, and we are called to live with compassion. And when we live with kindness and compassion, we start to experience happiness, joy, laughter, wisdom. So this next practice is you get up every day, and some days you don't feel like it, and some days you feel like you're in small self, and sometimes you've got a headache, and sometimes you're wrestling with things, and you choose love. And you go out and you create a ripple effect in your life. And you make a difference because you choose to be in big self, and you choose to be kind, and you choose to have a little empathy for other people and to sort of feel their suffering, and you choose to listen to people of different points of view, and you don't think you're superior to anybody because you know you're ordinary and magnificent. A unique being, a conscious being. You know you're a conscious being, and you're a ripple effect for everybody in your life. This is Satyagraha, soul force, soul power, love power. And I would suggest to you that millions of people, can you imagine millions of people living with Satyagraha, the soul power practice? 3 levels, okay? First level is respect for yourself. The wisdom to be mindful, to wake up in the morning and be present with your breath, and to remember that you are not an object and you will not let anyone treat you like an object, and to be awake behind your mind, to take charge of your mind, to respect yourself in that way. And the second level is respect for others, the wisdom and mindfulness to see that no one else is an object either, that every other person is a soul, a radiant being, and that you want to honor that soul and radiant being. And with some people you need to have good boundaries, absolutely. There are some people who are out of control or in pain or ignorant or even have evil intent. You need to have good boundaries, but nevertheless the intent is still to honor the soul in everyone and in all life. And the third level of the Satyagraha practice is respect for all the marvelous diverse species, so that we do make these shifts, so that we don't lose 40 or 50% of our species, that we choose, each of us, to help each other to live more sustainably. Believe me, I need help. I'm caught up in the trance just like you are. Our fossil fuel trance, our runaround trance, our devour material things trance. But we can wake up from it. And millions of people are trying. And as we try, we will create a momentum. And I want to feel that mountaintop vision that we're going to create peace on this planet for real. When we realize who we are, when we have those peak experiences, where we wake up from behind our mind and our trance of small self and our patterns and all that stuff that's been conditioned into us. It's truly a moment of grace, is it not? A moment of joy. I would suggest to you that when John Woolman woke up, living in 1790 as a Quaker, he woke up one day and he said, you know, I'm a free man under heaven and earth. Everyone should be a free man or woman under heaven and earth. No one should ever own another human being, John Woolman said in 1790. So he went around in his lifetime and he talked to every single Quaker in all the 13 colonies, and by the time he died, not one Quaker owned a slave. All had been freed, and the Quakers became part of the underground movement because John Woolman had a moment of grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you.
I want to talk about rising for the great change. And you notice I'm saying the great change. This is the great turning, the great awakening, the great transformation. It's not a small change. It's a profound change in our direction away from the icebergs up ahead in the dark. It's a choosing life on earth. It's not creating a utopian world in which there's no pain. It's not creating a world in which there ceases to be any suffering. Suffering seems to be interwoven into human life and into our journey. It is creating, though, a graduation from our war-weary adolescence to our conscious adulthood, where we decide as individuals and as a nation and as a humanity that we are going to go to the next level as a planet. We are going to green the earth, replant the forests. We're going to create health care that is a right for everyone. We're going to remove and eradicate the pockets of poverty and hunger and suffering around the planet, because that's the only thing that's in our own best self-enlightened interests, to create a world that works for everyone. Because we have weapons of mass destruction now. Now look how far we've come. There's hope, folks. Paul Hawken, in his book, Blessed Unrest, says that there are at least 1.5 million organizations around the planet committed to environmental restoration and or human rights. 1.5 million, let alone all the peace organizations, all the churches, all the synagogues, all the mosques, all the folks who are really committed to love and compassion. There's at least 3 million groups around the planet, at least, who are moving in this direction. And here's the key piece. It's a spiritual democracy, like the Dalai Lama says. If we want to go to the great change, we have to rise for the great change. And hundreds of millions of us have to be leaders. We have to be the movement, to have the energy to do what needs to be done, and to do it fairly quickly, especially with regard to things like the global warming issue. It is an imperative that we create the great change, which has to do with creating the conditions for peace on earth. So if you ask me about the great change, the great turning, the great awakening, I would give you this vision. 200 years from now, in the 23rd century, historians will look back at our era and call it humanity's great change, great awakening. They will say that an inclusive, unifying, love-based movement in which millions of people took responsibility to live with respect for each other and all life was able in the 21st century to create the conditions for sustainable peace on earth. They will say this great change was preceded by a dark time when human actions threatened the very fabric of life. Many called it a revolution of the spirit, because at its heart was both the individual awakening to the light of the soul and the dawn of our conscious humanity. Others called it the Green Revolution, because through ecology we came to understand the profound interdependence of all life, and thus we transformed our energy systems from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and from a polluting, disposable society to one based in wisdom and conservation. As a result, we were able to create a movement of movements, a coming together of all of these movements dedicated to our two greatest goals: restoring the earth, reversing global warming, protecting the diversity of species, and fostering a sustainable society and creating peace, ending hunger and poverty, increasing health and social justice, and advancing human rights for all people across race, creed, and gender. One earth, one humanity. May you rise for the great change. So the next practice is restoring the earth. We need to restore our earth. We need to reforest it. We need to reduce our carbon footprint. We need to do that in our individual lives. We're all up against it in that way. We're all in it. What's going to help is just to take steps in the direction of where we want to go. We need to work together across nations. We need to work together across corporations. But isn't it amazing what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years in terms of an emerging green revolution? I know so many of my clients are starting green companies, sustainable companies below the surface. We need an economy that is not devouring the planet. We need an economy that is sustainable, that is congruent with our ecology. And we need to live that change. I'd like you to picture holding the earth in your hands, each one of you, and just feel that magnificent
of green,
blue,
red roses too.
green,
I see
vibrant,
bloom for
presence of life, an island in dark space. And as you hold the earth in your hands, think how much you love the earth. Think how much you love the trees, running through meadows and laughing on the sands of the shore. Feel in your heart how much you love this earth and how committed you are to restoring our beautiful planet.
What a wonderful world. I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
I'll just touch on this practice of spreading peace. You can't spread peace if you don't feel peace. Peace is something that's in the heart, in our lives. Abraham Lincoln, who practiced forgiveness all his life and drew his apparent adversaries close to him, always said, I don't have enough time not to forgive. He said, when you want to do something in this life, when you want to make a difference, when you want to live your purpose, why keep a grudge? Make peace. Make amends with everyone in your life. Clear it all out. Choose to be a beacon of light that is spreading peace in your life and working for creating the conditions for peace on the planet. And again, it will bring us more joy. Envision with me, will you please, that in the dark valley of human existence where there's been so much pain and suffering, where in the 20th century alone we killed 100 million people in wars. Envision with me that in that dark valley there are the first rays of dawn coming over our landscape. And those rays of dawn are coming down into our lives, and that you can see the streams and you can see the environmental movement coming down over the last 2 centuries in concern for the planet. You can see the women's rights movement coming down in concern for women's rights and the tremendous strides that at least women in some parts of the world have made. You could see the human rights, civil rights movement. You can see all of the faith communities that are truly committed to love and compassion, and all the spiritual entrepreneurs that are truly committed to using their money on behalf of the good. And you can see those streams of light coming down into a mighty river in our time. What Dr. King called the mighty river of love and justice, coming down into our time, and the result of that is the illumination of our planet. So, I invite you, in your heart of hearts, to choose right now to be a light for the coming dawn. Yes. To feel the coming dawn, because once you feel it, it doesn't matter when it comes, you see, then you start living in the dawn. You start living in the coming of the dawn now. With all of my heart and mind and spirit, I want to offer the intention and the prayer that we are the Great Awakening. That everyone here is part of the Great Awakening, whatever you call it, and that we go out and generate as much ripple effect as we can. You and I matter. And I want to invite you to stand up, and as you stand up, to consider choosing hope. Come on, stand up. And as you stand up, to consider being the change that the world needs by living your highest calling, your specific calling. And let us stand up to vote with our lives, as the Dalai Lama says, with our thoughts and actions. And let us stand up to live with love and respect for self, others, and earth. Let us stand up to protect the environment and create a sustainable future. And let us stand up to end hunger on this planet, to reduce poverty and increase justice everywhere, to light your spirit past the flame, and yes, to put a little love in your heart.
a little love in your heart. Think of your fellow man, lend him a helping hand. Put a little love in your heart. You see it's getting late, please don't hesitate. Put a little love in your heart. And the world will be a better place. Yes, the world will be a better place. I say the world will be a better place for you. And me. Just wait
and see.
Another day goes by, still I hear the children cry. Put a little love in your heart. If you want the world to know, we won't let hatred grow. Put a little love in your heart. And the world will be a better place. Yes, the world will be a better place. I say the world will be a better place for you and me. Just wait and see. Wait and see.
I send you out with this. Now is the time. For we've glimpsed the promised land, and it's the entire living earth. Now is the time for we've actually found the chosen people, and it's all races, creeds, and nations, one human family. Now is the time for we've recognized the universal ethic of the Golden Rule, taught by all of our wisdom traditions. Now is the time to go to the mountaintop together and look over and say, yes, indeed, we are going to create the conditions for peace in our lives and on earth. Amen.
Just wait and see. Put a little love in your heart.